Health and wellness professionals, probably more than a lot of my other clients, firstly, they don't know about the law. But secondly, they don't really care about learning all of the legal answers. I would say my legal practice is probably divided 50% in helping clients practice proactive law and getting them set with documents. And then the other half would be reactive law. And I can just tell you that the peace, the tranquility, the security, and confidence of those doing it proactively, it just makes sense to do it to avoid all of the possibilities of what could happen.
Welcome to Marketing and Mindset for Wellness Coaches, the podcast for health coaches and wellness entrepreneurs just like you who are building a business, making the world a healthier place, and designing a first-class life. I'm your host, Kim Foster, MD and certified business coach, and I'm on a mission to help you up-level your strategy and raise your mindset so you can truly thrive and grow your business. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode. Today, we are going to be talking about all kinds of legal matters for your business. And I know that this isn't always the sexiest of subjects, but what's even less sexy is the stress that so many of you feel around the legal aspects of your business. Because let's face it, this is absolutely necessary. So it's no good trying to ignore it and not educating yourself. So today I've got a guest with me who you are going to absolutely love because he really puts the fun into this whole subject, and you're really going to love his approach. And he's going to break things down into a set of non-intimidating steps and practices, which is going to make this all so much easier. Cory Sterling is a terrific guy who happens to be a lawyer and a yoga teacher. The law firm that he founded, which is called Counsel, was awarded the #1 most innovative fitness and wellness law firm of 2021. Cory set up his firm specifically to support entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space, people just like you. And how awesome is that? He has really done this incredible job of blending his passions to serve a very specific niche. And as soon as I came across him, I knew he was the perfect person to bring on the show to talk to you. I had a lot of fun talking with Cory, not to mention got a ton of very useful information from him, and I think you're going to love listening into our conversation. So let's jump right in. All right, today I am very excited to be chatting with Cory Sterling, who is the founder of the heart-leading law firm Counsel. Cory is a lawyer and a small business owner and yoga teacher and author of the Yoga Law book. Welcome to the podcast, Cory. It is so awesome to have you here. And seriously, that's a lot of hats that you wear.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. It's great to be here. And luckily, my head size hasn't changed in a while. So just switch the hats as they come, one moment this hat, another moment that hat. And I like backwards hats best of all. So the hat guy,
perfect. Amazing. Well, then it all aligns. It's all perfect. Okay. Yeah. I can't wait to get into our conversation. And we're going to be talking about some legal essentials for wellness pros, I can't wait to talk to you about that and pick your brain, because this topic has got to be one of the trickiest things for so many of my clients and students, and it just causes a ton of stress and anxiety. So I'm really looking forward to getting some clarity and unpacking a few things for our listeners today. But before we get there, I'm so curious to hear a bit more about your background and what brought you to this point. I bet there is quite a story and quite a journey behind all of that.
Yeah, there's definitely been a journey. It's been a trip, it's been a long, strange trip, as the Grateful Dead say. But it's been beautiful. And to be honest, most of it has sort of been unintentional, right? There were a couple of seeds that were planted some time ago about a certain lifestyle that I wanted to have and a certain way that I wanted to live and the types of people that I wanted to work with. And I sort of just followed each of those paths in a very sort of relaxed and easy nature, and sort of let the path of everything unfold in front of me. And that's, I know it's such an ambiguous thing to say, but that's really the truth of how it all happened. And that's how I got to, being a lawyer for health and wellness professionals and working online and having an online team and having clients all over the world. And it's just been something that, again, it never really was my intention to do all of the things that I've done. But it sort of just happens sometimes. And that's how it happened for me.
I love that. That's amazing. I love that you just sort of in a very relaxed way. I mean, that's definitely, I can hear that. And which is in contrast to like a lot of people feel, I think I feel a lot of anxiety around what is their path and what is the right step to take and what is the right next move. So I love that you've got this kind of more flow approach to it.
Yeah, it didn't. I'll be honest. Obviously, 5 years into running my business, it's a different conversation than if we were just starting, right? If I was in the first year, I probably would have all of these questions like, oh my God, is it going to work? Are people going to want to work online with a lawyer? And wellness professionals really need a lawyer and all these sort of things that I've learned over time. But the way sort of how all of it started was that I'd worked for a couple of law firms in Vancouver. I decided to leave because I was not having fun, and the clients I was working with were not having fun in practicing that type of law. So I booked a one-way ticket to Europe, and I was like, cool, I'm going to put myself first, and I'm going to try to build a life where I can travel and be a lawyer at the same time and work with super rad clients who are making the world a healthier and better place. And in the back of my mind, I always said, okay, cool. If it doesn't work, then I'll just come back and then I can get a job in an office building and I can be miserable, but at least I'll know that I've tried. And what's cool is that, almost 5 years later, I feel like I'm still on the same trip. And it just keeps going in different and unanticipated directions. But the lesson that I've taken from it is that when you do what it is that you want to do, and when you do what will feel good for you, everything else will take care of itself. So the primary focus is making sure that I'm having fun with my work, making sure that my clients are enjoying working together, and just having a really honest approach to that.
I love that. I love that you decided to use that as your like fun was your guiding principle. I'm not having fun, time for a change. And just to continue to use that as your through line. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's when I was a kid, were you in carpool? Did you have to carpool when
Yeah,
you
yeah, of course.
Yeah, carpool is one of the things I do not miss about life. I wasn't having fun. I like driving. I like being in control. Carpool was like, go to this person's house, go to that person's house. If it's not the quickest route to my house, why am I going there, basically?
Hmm.
But my mom had a sticker in her car in carpool that I would always just sit and look at. And it was a Ben and Jerry's sticker. And it said, if it's not fun, why do it?
Oh my God, I was going to actually quote that to you because I remember when I was in med school and I took I went on a road trip by myself, just to like a spiritual journey to like New England, just in my little car. And I did a tour of the Ben and Jerry's factory in Vermont. And that was like their guiding principle. If it's not fun, why do it? That was like what started their whole company. And I absolutely fell in love with that. And that actually was a thing that, changed a lot of stuff for me, even way back then. I was like, hang on, am I having fun right now in what I'm doing? So I can't believe that you just quoted that Ben and Jerry's quote. That's amazing.
Well, you did tell me before we started recording that Ben and Jerry's is the sponsor of your podcast.
Yes, very smoothly worked in. That was perfect. Well done. Okay, amazing. So tell me a little bit about, this long and winding road that you had and the like pursuit of, having fun in life and business. What is it that you are doing now? Just give me a little nutshell of like who you help, what kind of work are you doing right now?
We've basically condensed the legal experience for wellness professionals into 3 or 4 documents. And the way that we've got there is that I've had thousands of conversations with health and wellness professionals, whether they're health coaches, whether they do things around diet, whether they do things around mindset, whether they do yoga or Pilates or whatever it is. And I've just had the same conversation literally thousands of times. And the conclusion that I've come to is that wellness professionals don't really firstly, they don't know about the law. For the most part, they're very, very ignorant about what they need to be aware of and what rules surround their practice. But secondly, like they don't really care about learning all of the legal answers. And instead, they just want to have a framework in place so that they can practice with confidence. And that basically it's like you're outsourcing all of your legal questions or concerns so that you don't have to think about it, so that you can think about the things that are fun to you. So the general assumption we're operating on is that health and wellness professionals do not think that legal documents are fun, which is okay because it's something that we've determined at our company is fun. So the majority of clients who we work with are small business owners or someone who's wanted to start a small business for a long time. They have a combination of an online and in-person practice, or either or. And they're basically at a point of growing. They want to protect their intellectual property. They want to have well communicated relationships. And most importantly, they don't want to get sued, and they want to do everything correctly. So we've basically streamlined and simplified the process of getting those documents in place, to the point where, look, if you're a health and wellness professional, there are probably 3 or 4 documents you need, and we've done them for hundreds of people, and we're happy to make sure you have a positive experience in drafting it, customizing it, feeling comfortable with it, and ultimately using it.
That's awesome. You've basically just described my entire listenership and community. So this is good. This is really good. I know that this is exactly what so many of my clients and community are in that mindset. They know that it's important. They really don't want to get bogged down with the details, but and there's a lot of fear and anxiety around that too. So let's dive into that. I'd love to get some of the basics out of the way. I'm going to ask you kind of an obvious question, but I want to hear your specific thoughts on this. But, for health and wellness entrepreneurs in particular, like, why is it important to attend to the legal matters?
Because the reality is, as a small business owner, inevitably you are going to interact with the law one way or another. It's almost virtually impossible in the lifespan of your business for you to be able to operate and not run into a legal issue, although it would be awesome if that did happen for you. What I've learned is that the most important thing you can do is make the investment up front and ensure that you have documents that are specifically tailored to you and your business, instead of copying something, borrowing something, using a general template, and then running into big problems and then having to pay 4 or 5 times more at a minimum in order to resolve it. Not to mention like the ongoing day-to-day stress of not knowing if you're doing things properly, or if everything's at best legal practices. So a couple of really practical answers to your question. One is because all of your assets are at stake. Whether or not you realize it, if you're operating as a sole proprietor, any personal assets that you or your family has, if you're married, or even if you're set to inherit money, I guess until it's yours, it doesn't transfer. But if you're operating and you don't have the right agreements, and someone suffers an injury and you're found to be liable, they are allowed to come after your car. They are allowed to come after your home. All of your personal assets are connected with your practice if you're operating as a sole proprietor. So the big reason is to protect your assets. The second reason is that the thing that I've learned in helping my clients practice what I call proactive law is that when you're proactive in working with your clients and communicating expectations in the relationships, the chances of a problem actually materializing are so much smaller when you've had someone sign an agreement beforehand, clearly outlining who's going to do what and who's responsible for what. And so that's like a really important asset in both building your business and providing positive experience with clients. And then if there's an issue with the clients, helping to resolve it. And then thirdly, health and wellness professionals, probably more than a lot of my other clients, need customized specific legal documents because usually they're operating in an industry that's unregulated. And government as a general does not really like unregulated industries, and they'll pay attention more to unregulated industries than they will other industries. Like, for example, let's say if you're a registered dietitian, that means you've completed a program that is government mandated, that has particular standards, and as such, you're allowed to perform particular services. But if you're not a dietitian and you're, let's say, you have some other form of designation, but you're doing the work that a dietitian would do, that's an issue. And A, governments will take a problem with that. And then B, if your clients have a bad experience working with you, it would be very easy for them to say that you misrepresented what you were doing. So I'm trying to simplify it as best as possible, but those would probably be the main answers.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. So like protection for sure, like protecting your assets. And then also I hear you saying like prevention, like preventing problems even before they arise. So much better to prevent stuff than to have to like scramble and deal with it after the fact.
Yeah, when you're scrambling to deal with it after the fact, the other byproduct that I think a lot of people don't consider is like how stressful of a situation that is and how much energy that takes away from you, being awesome to your clients, but also being awesome to your family. And if you're a mother, being awesome to your kids. And if you have a partner, being awesome to your partner. Because the reality is when someone is going through a situation where it appears they may be getting sued, or there's some sort of lawsuit brewing, or a really disgruntled client who had a bad experience and now is seeking retribution, that takes a massive emotional toll on someone. And so I would say my legal practice is probably divided 50% in helping clients practice proactive law and getting them set with documents, and then the other half would be reactive law. And I can just tell you the difference of the peace, the tranquility, the security, and confidence of those doing it proactively is that it just makes sense to do it to avoid all of the possibilities of what could happen.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you think that it's stressful, like trying to get all your legal ducks in a row in the beginning, imagine it's like, I'm sure it's nothing compared to the stress of having a problem on your hands.
Yeah, and a big thing, the biggest thing that I see with a lot of our health and wellness clients is like they're at a point where they're about to expand their business, right? They're really starting to market it. They're starting to grow. Maybe they started offering their practice to people who they knew, or family members, or closer groups. And everybody wants to take their offering and really build a bigger scale community in what they're doing and work with more people and help more people. And one thing that I just see always holding them back is not being confident or secure with that legal framework. So like I said, our whole job is to simplify the process, make it easy, make it painless, make it quick, and then just have everyone on their way so that they can continue building and growing their dream community.
Yeah, I think that is actually such an important point that you made because, yes, I mean, of course, you want your business to grow. And if you're not feeling safe in growing, then you're going to hold yourself back. If you don't feel like you're actually protected and that you might be exposing yourself to some problems, then you're actually just going to sabotage your own growth. And I think that that's a real thing, like that. I'm sure you've seen that.
I see it all the time, and it's amazing because if you think about what the ROI would be on having legal peace of mind versus growing your business, like it would pay itself off immediately because everything is energy and everything's vibration. So if your vibration is even in part like, oh, well, I really want to grow and I really want to bring on more clients, but I'm not sure if I'm doing everything properly. And I don't know if the waiver covers me and I don't know if the process of using the documents is correct. You're going to subconsciously not attract those, that volume that you're looking for. And I've just seen such a different switch for my clients when they feel confident and secure, and then it just blows up and gets massive because they don't have any blocks holding them back.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. So now most of my listeners, most of the people in my community, they're building an online business. And I know that this carries different issues than like a brick and mortar setup. And maybe we can talk about that too in a minute, but let's just stick with the online business for now. Like, do you have tips for those of us who are practicing virtually, and how do we do that in a safe and legally protected way? Like, we're in the era of Zoom and social media and all those kinds of things.
First and foremost, for all of the online services, the first and most important point is having a great privacy policy, but also having an appropriate disclaimer, and social media disclaimer as well. Because what the three documents that will sell, that we include in our package and that will sell to all of our clients, even if starting, let's say, an online health and coaching business, one would be the waiver of liability, which prevents you from getting sued. The second would be the service agreement, which communicates the expectations with your clients. And then the third would be the privacy policy, the terms of use, and the social media disclaimer. And what I always say to people is like, each document has a purpose for a particular relationship. And the privacy policy and the disclaimer and the social media disclaimer are for all of your online relationships. And that's like someone visiting your website, you have no idea who they are, or someone who's participating in Instagram Live with you and you have no idea who they are. And someone who's providing their email address to you on your website that, just automatically gets updated to your MailChimp or whatever it is, like that's the most important relationship to focus on. In addition to that, when you're doing everything online and you're collecting personal information, as clients tend to do when it comes to health and health and wellness online businesses, you have to disclose where you keep that information. If the information's confidential, if you share it with third parties, like, for example, let's say you use Stripe or PayPal, at law, you have to have a privacy policy that includes links to the PayPal privacy policy to let people know, like, hey, I may not be keeping all of this information, but I'm going to be using this third party that will be keeping that information. And this, and please consult their policy. So it's one of those things like, I don't want to get too granular and go into too deep, because even as I'm saying it, I realize how sort of confusing it is. But the answer to the question is that having a really good privacy policy and disclaimer is important. And then I think the other thing for online is making sure your waiver of liability covers you for practicing online, because you could be using a waiver from someone who, was using that for in-person services, which would not apply to you, because the risks and activities of online practice are different than in-person risk. And then lastly, just when it comes to the service agreement, letting people know exactly what the process is, and that things will not be things are not going to be done in person. And even if you have a hybrid of sometimes in person, sometimes not, you have to communicate that to people and let them know. So it's the goal of each of the relationships at law is to communicate your expectations openly and honestly. And because the nature of what you're doing is online, all of the documents have to, be based around that.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. So, I mean, when you talk, you mentioned the word waiver, and I'd love to just get a little bit more clarity on when you say waiver. Are you talking about waiver for people who you actually like, your actual paying clients that are working with you, or do you mean like more general, like in terms of like website visitors and things?
Website visitors would be covered under a disclaimer.
Mhm.
Because a waiver, so just to clarify, so a waiver is a document that somebody signs where they're forfeiting their legal rights. So
Okay.
what that means is I'm going to be working with you, Dr. Kim, and you're going to be doing ABC, and the risks of ABC are DEF. And normally, if we didn't sign any agreement, if I suffered any injury or harm or damage as a result of you providing these services, you would be directly liable to me. But because you've clearly communicated with me what we're doing, how we're doing it, all of those things, I'm relinquishing, I'm giving up my right to sue you, and where you normally would be liable, now you're not going to be liable. So that's a
Hmm.
waiver of liability. When it comes to a disclaimer, it's more like anyone can visit your website. So if you have a blog where you're sharing information about healthier tips, for back health, or how to, the impact of gluten in the month of October, whatever it is that you want to write about, if someone goes off and follows that particular advice or recommendations that you're giving them, you can't get them to sign a waiver because you don't know who's visiting the site. So the whole idea is that you want to post something with anything that's available to the public at large that says, hey, here are my qualifications. Before you act on anything included in this blog, make sure that you're healthy enough to do so, and only do so at your own risk, and you accept responsibility, and blah, blah, blah. All of the blah, blah, blah is basically related with that.
All the blah blah blahs. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Actually, that's great.
Is the distinction clear?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Totally clear. And you need all of these things, right? Like you need those layers of protection for just like your website visitors who you don't have a relationship with and they are not your client, but you still need that disclaimer in place. But then you definitely need a waiver for people who you enter into a working relationship. They're paying you, they're becoming a client. So, yeah, did I get that right? The
Yeah,
distinction?
exactly. And the answer is yes, that you do need all those things. And the
Yeah.
reason why it's like what we really practice at Conscious Counsel at my law firm is that I practice practical law. And so I just know on a day-to-day basis if a problem is going to come up, how it's going to come up. Someone's going to follow. They're either going to be working with you directly, they're going to be disappointed with something, or they suffered some form of injury or damage from working with you. They're going to claim that you're responsible. And like what you want to be able to do is point to a document that says, hey, before we started working together, I told you exactly what we would do and what could possibly happen. And, as a result, you still continued to agree to participate. And you said that you would not hold me responsible. When it comes to the disclaimer, someone's going to read something. They're going to say the information's incorrect. You don't have the qualifications to share it, blah, blah, blah. You're going to want to be able to point to that disclaimer or the terms and conditions of your website and say, hey, well, I clearly let you know if you looked at my privacy policy terms and conditions and online disclaimer, I let you know beforehand that these are my qualifications and that, I don't speak to the veracity of what I'm sharing. And as such, you will not hold me responsible. And it's sort of like the buck stops there in both instances.
Okay, that's perfect. So can we just dig into waivers just a little bit more? I mean, most of my people are like health and wellness coaches. What are some of the things that a health and wellness coach needs to think about or include, or, when it comes to having a waiver that their clients are going to be signing?
The waiver has to very, very specifically describe what activities you do and um, what the risks of those activities are and how those activities and how those risks may materialize. So the whole idea is like waivers are different than everything else because waivers mean that someone is signing away their legal rights. So
Mhm.
normally government won't be such a stickler about letting two parties agree to anything. The general rule at law is that two parties can agree to anything that is not illegal. But when it comes to waivers, someone is signing away their legal rights. So government's like, okay, cool. This is something more serious. Someone's signing away their legal rights. So we have to the document has to be up to snuff and it has to be clearly drafted and communicate all of these things appropriately. Now, a waiver in many instances, waivers will not hold up, and a waiver will not hold up if it is not properly drafted. So let's say I'm working with a client and I don't mention anything about nutrition consulting at all. I get them to sign a waiver. I say, okay, I'm going to be doing personal training and we're going to be doing goal setting and we're going to be, we're going to be doing fitness together and all of these things. And then I'm like, oh, and then in practice, I'm like, yeah, well, I can help you come up with some really simple diet things that you can implement into your practice. I'm not a registered dietitian. I don't have the qualifications to legally be able to give that advice. And my waiver of liability doesn't cover me. In the event that, let's say, someone's allergic to something and they didn't know, and then I tell them that they should be eating this food and they start eating it and they have a terrible allergic reaction and they miss work for a week and blah, 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 blah. And I just say blah 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 because
Mhm.
I see these things happen all of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of like, and I think there's no excuse for a lawyer ever to use blah blah blah. So I'm not going to do that anymore. What I mean to say is that the situation will typically unfold in the same way, where someone's going to have some complaint about a damage they suffered. Now, if the waiver doesn't specifically cover anything related to nutritional guidance or advice, then there would be a big problem because that person would say, "You're right. I did sign a waiver of liability relating to the use of kettlebells and push-ups and high interval intensity training and stretching and Pilates and yoga, but it didn't say anything about diet. I was relying on the information that you as a professional were sharing with me. If I knew that diet was related, I never would have agreed to sign the waiver. As such, that relationship at law that you're responsible to make me whole for any damages I suffer related to the diet is not present, and I'm going to sue you for X number of dollars."
Okay, that's so important. So it really does, you need to make sure, which is, I think, going back to what you said, is you really need something customized that covers like all the different things that you may or may not be covering in your working relationship. Because if something just simply isn't mentioned, then you're not covered for that at all.
That's it, Dr. Kim. So, and that's why I can tell you, because I've been hired to challenge waivers of liability and I've been hired to defend waivers of liability. So
Mm.
I've been on both sides, and I can tell you exactly that when I'm looking at something that's not professionally done, that's not specific to a particular business, it would take a cup of coffee in 3 minutes to be able to point out all the reasons why the waiver of liability would not apply and why my client is entitled to tens of thousands, if not more, dollars worth of damages.
Right. Okay. Um, Now, one thing that I wanted to, dig into kind of a stickier issue. I mean, these are all kind of sticky issues potentially, but I know that I have a lot of people in my community who are pivoting into coaching from the healthcare field. So they're like a licensed practitioner in the healthcare field. Now they're building up a side hustle as a coach, which in many cases, like they're hoping to replace their current income. But it's what you kind of mentioned a few minutes ago. Like there are licensed and regulated professions, and then there are unregulated things like coaching. And so it seems, I know that this is sticky territory legally, but so what kind of tips or thoughts do you have on like how are you creating the boundaries so that you're making it clear about your scope of practice as a coach? Like what's your take on all of that stuff?
Yeah, with all of these things, it's all about communicating what your qualifications are and what your scope of services are going to be.
Mhm.
Because the truth is, if I'm going to start working with someone as a coach and I'm signing an agreement beforehand where they say, like, hey, I'm calling myself a life coach or a relationship coach or a health coach, but I have zero educational background. I've never done any form of certification, and I'm just choosing myself to call this because I think I'm really good at helping people navigate their life and their challenges and stress or whatever it is. Technically, there's nothing, because coaching is not a regulated field, that anyone can be a coach and anyone can call themselves a coach. That's not the problem. The problem always comes down to representations and warranties. And just the fact that, okay, call it what it is, right? I could be a business coach to people. I have no qualifications to be a business coach, except that I run and operate a business. And there's nothing wrong with me being a business coach, but it's just, you want, the way that you'll avoid the problems is by letting people know beforehand, like, hey, straight up, these are what my experiences are. These are my qualifications. I've never gotten any certification related to coaching, and I just hold myself out as a coach because I've been able to help hundreds of people and they've seen fantastic results, and I want to be of service to you if you feel like this is the right fit. There's nothing incorrect about doing that, but the thing that you want to be careful about is that you just don't make any misrepresentations to anyone that you work with. And you also, in the same way, you have to disqualify yourself from qualifications that you don't have. And just, especially more in the health side and much less of the coaching side, it's all about regulated industries and regulated professions and licensed professions. And you want to avoid the possibility of inducing someone to working with you based on their feeling of a representation that you've made.
Yeah, and it's that disqualification of yourself from a pre-existing qualification that you had. That's where I feel like a lot of healthcare professionals get caught up because I mean, yes, you maybe went through school and you were a registered dietitian, so you do hold a license as a particular, like in a regulated field. But now you want to be doing life coaching and you don't want people or somebody to feel that you are going to be their dietitian. So making that crystal, I heard you say, like, really it's
Oh,
about making it clear what you are doing and what you're not doing in this particular role. And so can that be done like through, your client agreements, your waivers, all of that stuff?
yeah, that's the whole point. The whole point of all of this, like the first thing that I said, we set it up, we do it once properly, and then whoever the online health and wellness professional is doesn't have to think twice about it, and then you don't have to worry about all of these things. It's like, oh, cool, we set it up, it's on the website, it's in the client agreement. If someone's going to allege that you made some sort of representation, you can point to a legally binding, signed, executed agreement to let them know that that's not the case.
Mm. Okay, right. That helps. I think that makes it clear. I know that. I mean, of course, I work with a lot of doctors who are transitioning into health and wellness coaching, and they're worried that they aren't going to be able to make it clear to people that they are not functioning as their doctor. They're not going to be interpreting their results. They're not going to be prescribing anything. But as long as it sounds like as long as you're spelling that out super clearly and they're signing to that, then it can be done.
Yeah, and I can tell you definitely, when it comes to the possibility of offering medical services, you 100% need a disclaimer saying you're not a medical professional, you do not treat, you do not diagnose. Here are a list of the things that you do not do. It's so incredibly important to have that.
Okay, that's good. That's clear. Yeah. So, I'm also wondering, like, just to touch on a little bit about like the brick and mortar or like in person stuff, like the differences between that, because we've been talking primarily about, well, I guess a lot of stuff that we've been talking about would apply regardless. But some of my people, they are actually seeing people in real life, whether it's like a, in person visit or a retreat or, something like that. So, are there, legal issues that they need to be aware of surrounding a business like that?
The only things that you'd want to be aware of related to that is, like, firstly, the possibility that you're signing a lease and getting support on the lease if you're going to have an office. But other than that, it's not so extremely different. But remember, the point of the documents is to communicate expectations openly and honestly. So again, the waiver, because offering services in person is different than offering services online, the waiver would need to be drafted to cover both. For the service agreement, you'd want to deal with things like possibility of cancellations or rescheduling or those sorts of issues. And then maybe just also something around consent of touch, if that's something that's part of your scope of practice. But it's not, it certainly isn't as drastically different as you would think, even though the reality of what's happening is different. It's more just making sure that the documents reflect the expectations of that relationship. And obviously, there are different expectations when you're working together in person.
Mm. Okay, so it sounds like it's just so important to actually have a conversation with whoever is drawing up your agreements and things of all the things that you could be doing in this work with your people, whether, like you said, to touch or whether it's like an in-house, in-person kind of thing or virtual. And then that carries all kinds of issues around privacy and recordings and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. You want someone who understands the industry, someone who understands the scope of your practice and what it is that you're doing to get you fully protected.
That's awesome. Okay. And so where should people start? Like, my listeners right now, they're thinking, okay, so I understand the importance and I understand that I'm going to need this. Where do they start? Like, how do you find the resources and where do you go?
The first question is if you want to do it on your own or if you want to hire someone to do it. And so if you want to do it on your own, to me, that's an undertaking, just because it's law. And remember that there's if you're going to try to draft your own agreements, there's certainly nothing. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do, but that will just require some time investment, and you'd want the peace of mind to know that it's done properly. If you choose to do it on your own, there aren't that many resources out there. In full transparency. So, but also if you want to work with someone, you'd want to think about, okay, who's the right fit, who has experience of working with other professionals in this industry, who understands what the common problems are going to be, and sort of starting your search there.
Yeah, well, that I would think that would be so key if you do decide that you want to actually get some help with it is seeking out and finding somebody who has a frame of reference and maybe some experience in this field and in this industry and can actually speak to it from experience.
Yeah, the big thing that I've noticed is that the coolest thing about our documents that I'm most proud of is just we've been through this so many times. Like we've literally done this for hundreds of health and wellness professionals. So it's like we are, and not only have we done this for hundreds of people, but when we get a lot of clients who we start working with who are like, oh, I'm a coach and these are some of the problems I'm running into. And then once we go through that experience, we then improve our documents to make sure that they continue to address all of what these issues are. And to me, that's the big difference between working with lawyers who understand the industry and the practice versus, going to the lawyer on Main Street in your town and asking them to draft up a service agreement because they don't really they won't understand the nuances and the ins and outs. And also, like Pareto principle 80-20, 80% of clients will have an issue with the same 20% of issues. So are the documents going to be proactive in addressing what those problems are? That's the sort of thing that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have somebody who specializes in that field. Because I've certainly had many clients who've just taken their ideas and everything to their like family lawyer who just really has never worked with anybody who's building like a crazy thing as an online coaching business and really just is at a loss because it sounds risky. It sounds like there's going to be lots of exposure. So it can be very reassuring, I would think, to work with somebody, like yourself, obviously, who has got this wealth of experience of working with people who are in this field, has seen where things go wrong, has seen what needs to be put in place in order to protect you down the road, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's just it.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. This has been so fantastic. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. You've definitely given us a ton of insights into a very complicated and daunting topic for sure. But before we go, so tell me, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your company and connect with you?
You can find us on Instagram at Conscious Counsel. Our website is consciouscounsel.ca. I'm sure you can, you can put my email in the show notes, Cory@consciouscounsel.ca, and you could check out the book that I wrote, the Yoga Law book, which is available on Amazon. So it's as easy as using Google to connect with us, and I'm excited to connect with everyone. And Dr. Kim, thanks so much for the opportunity. I think what you're doing is rad. I love how you're helping all of these, health and wellness professionals who are getting to the point of marketing their business and growing it and and communicating and doing an awesome job. So one of my many hats, goes off to you and says, awesome job. Keep it up. Keep being great. And thanks so much for having me.
That's awesome. Nice bookending job, by the way. That was well done.
In the industry, it's called a callback.
Okay, cool. Okay, so what do you think? Is Cory awesome or what? Well, I hope that this episode gave you some useful insight into what you need to take care of legally for your business and also made the whole process seem a little less daunting and mysterious. I would love to hear your thoughts. Are there legal pieces that you know that you still need to get in place for your business? And where are you going to start? So let me know by finding me on Instagram, tag me in a post or a story, or send me a DM. And also be sure to check the show notes for all of Cory's details so you can get in touch with him too. Okay, that's a wrap for today. Have an amazing week, and I will talk to you again very soon. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Now, if you enjoyed this episode and you're excited to take your coaching business to the next level, then I would love to invite you to attend my free online class called How to Build a Six-Figure Health Coaching Business Using One Signature Program. And that's even if you're a brand new coach. I will be revealing the 3 behind-the-scenes secrets to financial freedom without exhaustion, burnout, or being a slave to social media. In this free class, you'll learn the exact blueprint to having the impact and life you desire, even if you're not sure how to make it happen right now. I'll also tell you about the single biggest mistake new health and wellness coaches make and what to do instead. And I'll be teaching you exactly how to design a signature program step by step, including how to price your offer. And yes, I give you real numbers. To attend this class, all you have to do is sign up at drkimfoster.com/6figures and reserve your seat for free. I will see you there.